When you make a deal with the devil, it's an invitation. And he takes the invitation very seriously. He comes right in. One of the worst cases I've ever heard was from the Exorcist of New York City back about 15 years ago. It was a woman, a young girl at Juilliard, a violinist. And she was about to graduate. She was brilliantly talented, but all of her friends were getting job offers and she had none. And her friends remember always hearing her say the words, "I would do anything to be famous." Well, guess who's listening? Your angel's listening, but also there's other things in the room. And it wasn't long after that that she went to bed one night, had a dream, and she said in the dream was the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, naked, another sign, calling card of the devil. And he said, "Do you really want fame and power?" And she said, "I do." And he produced a contract and he took his finger and slashed her finger and had her sign it in her blood. And then he touched the contract and it burst into flames and the ashes fell on the floor. So pretty easy to understand what happened, right?
You don't need an advanced literary.
Right. So when you wake up from that dream and you remember it, you might take a pause and be like, I don't think that was a good thing. But what's worse is her finger was cut and the ashes were next to the bed. So she still doesn't say anything.
Not to be the devil's advocate, but I guess to be the devil's advocate. Could this girl just have been nuts, making it up?
She could have been.
She could have, yeah.
But you have to hear the whole story.
Okay.
So within a couple of weeks, she signs this multinational tour, makes a ton of money, becomes very popular and famous on this circuit. And within a few years, she gets involved with drugs, goes to needles, gets HIV. Now she's dying in a New York hospital. And this whole thing comes back to how this started. And she calls her Filipino mother and tells her the story. And mommy calls the chancery, hysterical. I need an exorcist right away for my daughter. So Jim is the exorcist. He shows up and they tell him the whole story from the dream forward. And he says, okay, well, that's not good. You signed a blood covenant with the devil. So I'm going to need you to break that with the blood covenant. So you're going to write out the whole creed and then you're going to sign it in your blood. Well, the doctor's like, she has AIDS. She's not signing anything in blood. Not going to happen. And he says, well, then you need to step out of the room because she needs to do this. And she did do it. And she signed the contract, the creed. And within a few seconds.
The creed, for those who don't know, is I believe in God, the Father Almighty.
What we believe is as our faith.
Yes.
Yeah. The whole faith in a neat little package. And she signs it and she convulses and flatlines and dies. So now the doctor comes back and he's really upset. The mother is out of her mind. They're all blaming the priest. Hysteria goes on for about 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden she jumps up off the table. She's back. And they test her. No HIV, no AIDS. She's completely healed. And so she then committed for the rest of her life to only do music that would honor God and to tell people about the reality of the devil and not to make deals with him.
Wow. Hearing that, I'm struck. But then I think, well, there are all these miracles that have happened throughout history. And then what hits me is, how do people not believe in the face of all of this? Even I was just at a conference on signs and wonders. And so I was thinking of all these little coincidences, these improbable, perhaps naturally impossible things that everybody has experienced at some point in his or her life.
Yeah.
And when they strike you, you're so hit by them. And then 5 seconds later, you just go on with your life and it's as though they never happened.
Yeah.
So then I'm actually less surprised that people could hear a story like that and not believe.
I think a third of the people, if you picked up a mountain and moved it over there, a third of the people will believe right away. A third of the people will say it never happened. It was always over there.
Yeah.
And a third of them will be confused. And I think that's just the way human nature pans out. I've been pretty blessed in my life. I've seen so many miracles. I mean, so many that I expect them now. I used to be a contemplative hermit, just pray in the woods with a group of hermits for the most of the day. And when during that time, the Lord one day said to me, he said, the days are fast approaching when the extraordinary will seem ordinary. The extraordinary will seem ordinary, meaning like the miraculous will be so prevalent for what I'm going to do that it will start to seem ordinary. But don't ever take it ordinary because it's all grace and you have to always acknowledge that this is a great gift. And there are just so many. I mean, even the smallest little things, like there's a nun I'm friends with in Medjugorje, this place in Bosnia. They have a beautiful community called the Community of the Beatitudes. I think they have a chapter in Denver. And they were in charge of providing dessert for an orphanage, like 250 kids coming for a barbecue picnic thing. And the nuns were doing the dessert. And so one nun she put in charge of the dessert got a sample pack of like 12 pudding cups, said, will this be okay? And she says, oh, yes, wonderful, make sure we have enough. And the nun who was purchasing them got the day wrong. And she thought the barbecue was going to be the following day, and they hadn't arrived when the kids showed up. And she said, we have a big problem because, I don't have the pudding cups. She's like, well, we have all the other food. I mean, they're going to eat. But put out the 12-pack at the end of the table. And she goes, well, that's going to be terrible. Like only 12 kids will get it. And all the other kids will feel bad. She goes, just put it out. She puts it out. And all 250 kids go through. And every kid has a pudding cup. And she looks at me and she says, you know what the best part of this is? He didn't just multiply the food. He multiplied the plastic cups. And I go, sister, why is that a good thing? She goes, because we kept them. We have evidence of this miracle.
Huh.
Yeah.
What people hear these miracles and they'll sort of laugh or write it off or just dismiss them, including Christians. And I sometimes wonder, say, hold on, you believe that God the Son became incarnate and walked around and performed public miracles and then was crucified and died and was buried and on the third day rose again from the dead and sojourned on earth again for 40 days, performing so many miracles that St. John could not possibly record them all because all those books would fill up more than the entirety of the earth. But you don't believe that your car keys could have turned up in an improbable place. You don't believe that God could multiply some pudding cups. I think, where does the leap of faith jump in here? It seems like you've already accepted quite a lot.
I don't know. I feel it's the new beatitude. Blessed are the unbelievers. They will not be disappointed. Because part of believing is impactful on seeing the miracle, experiencing the miracle, bringing forth the miracle. Jesus could do very little in his hometown, not because he couldn't do it, because he's bound by his own rules of providence. And so he has required that faith be part of him doing the miracles. So if you're not going to believe, you're not going to see him. Unless, he has an incredible amount of love for you to the point of like Saul of Tarsus, where he's going to force you to see.
Yeah,
which he sometimes
you
does.
off your horse.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes he'll do it.
When I was reverting after 10 years of debauchery and decadence and atheism, practical if not explicit, I had a lot of these experiences. It was a fairly lengthy intellectual process of coming to accept that God exists, and then coming to accept that Christ is who he says he is, and coming to accept that the church is what she says she is. And sort of around that point that I started to have these numinous experiences. And I thought at the time, this probably doesn't speak very well of my condition right now, that God feels the need to grab me by my shoulders, shake me or smack me in the face and say, hey, stupid, I'm here.
Yeah, but how great that he did.
Right.
Because where would we both of us be?
Yeah.
Same thing for me.
Yeah, you were not a lifelong believing, practicing Catholic.
No, I left the church for 20 years.
So you leave the church, and you were, I read, a banker in New York.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like, I don't want to besmirch all bankers, but just knowing friends who have worked in that profession, that can be a very different lifestyle, not always conducive to virtue.
No, particularly on Wall Street, around from Harry's.
Right, my old
Both
neighborhood.
know. Yeah, that's a lifestyle. It's full of drugs and money and power and all the decadencies that go with it. I watched guys cash checks for $150,000 and spend it that weekend. Rent the penthouse at the plaza, bring in all the ladies and the booze, and do it all over on Monday. Like, that's a lifestyle. So with that comes, with this great sin, you're going to have a lot of demons that are just hovering, pushing you to go further. But not everybody's like that. In fact, in the center of that whole community is Little Our Lady of Victory Church.
Yep.
Yeah. And they had a group there that they founded called Wall Street Young Catholics Association. So when I had my conversion, I had to dump a bunch of people in my life that weren't healthy. And I said, I got to find some good people here. So I joined the Young Wall Street. That's where I met Father Jim Labar, the exorcist. So there's good people there. Not everybody's involved in all this stuff, but if you're young and susceptible to all that, it's all there for the taking.
And you mentioned earlier these young people, like this case of this violinist woman, who say, I would do anything for fame. I would do anything. And all these young and hungry people who are very ambitious. I can't help but notice there's a lot of occult and demonic symbolism, specifically in Hollywood. And we focus on it now because Sam Smith gets up at the Grammys dressed up like the devil and jiggles around about cheating on your wife. And I don't know, Lady Gaga doing weird performances and all sorts of things. But this has been the case in Hollywood forever.
Well, I would go baback further. Jesus said, the prince of this world, the ruler of this world is Satan, right?
But it seems especially pronounced in Hollywood. Or am I wrong?
No, you're right. But now he has vehicles to promote that he didn't have back then. So, I mean, think about this. That violinist, that was pre-social media. Now, think about all the people on Instagram that just want to be loved, and they put all this stuff out there. Why? So that you'll like them. It's all about envy. Instagram is just about envy. And
envy and I suppose gluttony, in that they call it a feed. Like you're scrolling through your
yes,
feed
it's true. I
just
never
to
thought of that. Yeah.
satiate your appetite for pixels.
Yeah, and in Twitter, that's all about anger,
Yeah.
and Facebook is they just sell you.
Yeah.
So they're all involved in one of these sort of capital sins, and how that draws people in. Imagine if you're spending your whole day trying to make the world love you, and you're taking your own photo all day and photoshopping it and putting in fancy backgrounds and then posting it saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." I mean, that's narcissist right there. You don't have the pool to fall in, but you're already in. And those people are trapped because that doesn't end after one post. Then they have to do one tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this is a whole life is all about them.
Yeah, I can't help but notice.
It's so opposite of the gospel.
I have a lot of friends from Hollywood, a lot of friends in show business, and a lot of people I know in that industry and in Hollywood in particular do not turn out very well. You especially think about child actors, almost all of whom go completely off the rail. But maybe most actors that I know have terrible lives. I don't just mean because they don't make any money, like most actors don't make any money. I mean, their personal lives are just get wrecked, and more so than my friends who are in other industries.
Well, again, think about what they do all day. So the focus of their life is on them and being in front of a screen, and then on a big screen where everybody can clap and tell you how great you are. And everybody around you probably, to not get pushed off the team, is telling you what you want to hear. And your life is so focused on you. Think about all the marriages. Like, it's a joke. People say if you last 10 years in Hollywood, that's like you're 75 years in real life. Because and then you spend half your year away from each other, filming love scenes with other women. Yeah. How on earth is that going to work? In a beautiful tropical island with alcohol.
Yeah.
But it'll work.
In essentially summer camp, because film sets it's like summer camp. I mean, it's this whole group of new people. It's a very intense experience. You're there forever. So you can see how that can go off the rail.